Here's something that might shock you. Over 42 million Americans are survivors of childhood sexual abuse. That's more than the entire population of Canada, and it's just one type of childhood trauma we're discovering.
Those numbers are staggering. How did we miss something this massive for so long?
Well, it's partly because we've been looking at trauma all wrong. You see, we typically associate PTSD with soldiers or disaster survivors, but there's this whole other dimension that affects children in ways we're just beginning to understand.
So you're saying childhood trauma is fundamentally different from adult trauma?
Exactly right. Some clinicians are now using the term developmental trauma disorder because it literally changes how a child's brain and body develop. Think about it. When an adult experiences trauma, their brain is already fully formed. But for a child, their entire developmental trajectory gets altered.
That makes me wonder about all the ways this might show up later in life.
Well, here's where it gets really interesting and concerning. These survivors are significantly more likely to develop addiction issues, obesity, chronic health problems. We're even seeing lower life expectancy rates. But you know what's fascinating? When we look at major public health crises like the addiction epidemic, viewing them through the lens of childhood trauma gives us a completely different perspective.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Like, how many of our society's problems might actually be trauma responses?
Right. And here's the thing. Our bodies release cortisol when we're in danger, right? But for these kids, their systems are constantly flooded with stress hormones. It's like their bodies are permanently stuck in survival mode.
So what happens to a child's developing brain under those conditions?
Well, imagine trying to build a house during an earthquake. That's essentially what's happening in these children's brains. They're developing neural pathways while in constant fight or flight mode. And you know what's really crucial to understand? These adaptations might look like behavioral problems to us, but they're actually survival strategies.
That really changes how we should approach treatment, doesn't it?
Absolutely right. There's this emerging approach called the trauma-informed model that's revolutionizing how we think about these issues. Instead of asking, what's wrong with you? We ask, what happened to you? It's a complete paradigm shift.
You know, this makes me think about how many people might be carrying these invisible wounds without even realizing it.
That's such an important point. And here's something else to consider. When you look at the research, childhood trauma is linked to everything from autoimmune diseases to heart problems. The body quite literally keeps the score of these early experiences.
So what can actually be done to help people heal from this kind of deep-seated trauma?
Well, the good news is that our understanding of neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire itself, has come a long way. We now know that healing is possible at any age, but it requires a complete rethinking of how our institutions, schools, healthcare systems, justice system approach these issues.
Sounds like a massive undertaking.
It is, but here's the hopeful part. We're starting to see real changes. Some schools are implementing trauma-informed practices. Healthcare providers are being trained to recognize trauma symptoms, and there's growing awareness about the need for early intervention.
This conversation really highlights how interconnected all these issues are. Mental health, physical health, social problems.
Exactly. And you know what? Understanding these connections is the first step toward breaking the cycle. When we recognize that what looks like bad behavior might actually be a trauma response, we can start offering the right kind of support instead of punishment.
Quite a paradigm shift in how we think about human behavior.
It really is. And here's what I think is most important to remember. Healing is possible, but it starts with understanding these adaptations that might be causing problems now. They once helped someone survive. That's powerful to recognize.